eventually unawareness will become destructive.
Hey, welcome back to the Church Staff Book Club. My name is Jonathan Malm.
I'm Jason Young.
And we are now on to our second book of the podcast.
Yes, we are.
Emotionally Healthy Leader by Peter Scazzero. Jason, this is a book that you recommended for us for our next one. You read it. I haven't read this book. I mean, I read the first chapter in preparation for this podcast, right? But what did you love about this book? What made you want to pitch it to me so much?
Yeah, I think in the world of leadership and church ministry, we talk about church ministry and all the stuff that we're doing, which is not a bad thing. The one thing I never heard about in undergrad, grad school, and I was introduced to this book in, I forget which doctoral program, but nobody talks about the emotional healthiness of a leader.
Yeah.
And so I came across this book and I'm like, this is it. And so I think this book can be really helpful to leaders in the church world. Do the church ministry stuff, but let's talk about what lies beneath that can actually help make things better.
I think there is this reality, and this is something I've been guilty of, is that we help other people become emotionally healthy as leaders, but we don't worry about ourselves. It's like, I mean, it would be like the servant, right? Because we're so focused on serving in the church, right?
Yeah.
We would rather serve other people. I'm going to serve them dinner, and we never eat ourselves, right?
Yeah.
Not eat ourselves, but eat for ourselves, right? And so this book, I feel like is really good. I was excited about it because I feel like there are a lot of people that maybe are working under unhealthy leaders, emotionally unhealthy leaders, and they're like, is there anything that I can do from underneath them, or what can I do to survive whenever maybe they're creating an unhealthy environment for us? So that's what I was excited about whenever I saw this book. And I do think that this dives into it pretty well. So this podcast, whether you read the book, whether you don't read the book, our hope is that we can learn together, right? We want to be able to, you know, there's more that happens whenever other people bring perspectives and ideas into the book than just if we read for ourselves. So that's our goal with this. And this first chapter especially set up kind of what unhealthy looks like, I think, really well. Jason, you were talking about some of the four things when we were prepping for this, that the unhealthy kind of behaviors that like the hallmarks of unhealthy leadership. Do you want to talk about those?
Yeah, I mean, when you think context, maybe you're listening, watching this right now, and you're like, all right, how did Jonathan and Jason get here? How did the writer, how did Peter get here? Often calls himself Pete. People call him Pete. So how did Pete get here? And think about this. The context is he was very well educated. He had, I think it was almost a decade of experience in the church world. He's leading a church, and in the introduction, he set up, he has these moments, but the one specific that we're talking about is he realizes that he is emotionally unhealthy, meaning he and or you or myself live in a continuous state of emotional and spiritual deficit. What does it mean? Well, it goes back to what Jonathan said. You're giving out more than you have on the inside. Right. And we'll unpack that in the coming weeks. But specifically in this chapter, he highlights four characteristics that actually show this to be true. So he talks about low self-awareness. He talks about, which this one we all understand, prioritize ministry over marriage, or if you're single, right, or singleness.
Which would be like actually pursuing someone potentially, or just focusing on who you want to grow to be if you eventually get married, right?
Yeah. There's this obsession to like ministry, and we forget that there are things in our personal lives that are ministry related, not just the work of inside the church. The third characteristic he talks about is doing too much for God, which even saying that out loud, you're like, I thought that we're supposed to do a lot. Well, it's more activity than the relationship can sustain. And we'll talk about what that means. And then failing to work. And this one, failing
this to rest, rather.
Yeah,
not failing to work.
Yeah. And the fourth characteristic, which, man, this is the one I hear that people struggle with the most, is failing to practice a Sabbath.
Yeah.
Failing to, So anyways, we'll unpack that. But those are the four characteristics he talked about that reveal the very beginning what being emotionally unhealthy as a leader looks like.
I thought it was interesting that he compared the emotional deficit, meaning you're giving out more than you have, right, to
Yeah.
that it leads to lack of self-awareness,
Yeah.
which is very interesting because I think that, I kind of struggle almost to like make that comparison because like
Mm.
I will snap at my kids. There are times in my life where I am emotionally unhealthy, right? Like financial pressures are happening. I see the stack of things. I get the email that comes in that just like wrecks my day, right? And
Yeah.
I find myself being short with my son or with my wife or someone, right? And I hopefully am aware in that moment, like, oh, what's going on? Like I've tried to practice self-awareness, but I thought it was interesting that he was like that. You do not realize what you're doing to other people, what you're bringing to the table.
That's right.
I thought that was interesting.
Yeah. And when you think about self-awareness, it gets seated in a bigger conversation. We won't unpack this, but self-awareness gets seated inside of emotional intelligence. Okay. Emotional intelligence, by definition, is my ability to recognize, understand, and manage my own emotions and kind of read the room and see the emotions and navigate relationships well. Okay. So that's kind of the emotional intelligence. Specifically, self-awareness sits inside of that. And I like to think of the analogy this way. Self-awareness is a mirror versus binoculars. Binoculars, which is what people are great at. In leadership world, we're great at this. We hold them up. We look at everybody out there. It brings them closer and we can see what they need or pick them apart or judge them, which I know nobody does here, but let's just talk, just pretend. Versus the mirror that when I hold it up, there's nobody else in it but me.
Or it shows us in context with other people. It shows how we're relating to other people and what we're surrounded by, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah. What people are not great at doing is looking internally. So when you think about self-awareness, it's really, you don't know what's going on the inside. You aren't paying attention to feelings. You're not paying attention to stress signals. You might not understand the deeper why behind behaviors and reactions, and catching yourself in those moments or catching yourself as they bubble up to the surface. John, let me ask you a question. Has there ever been a moment in your leadership where you realized in hindsight, which is typically right, that's why it's like, 2020 is like, we see behind us is so much easier. But have you ever realized in hindsight that you were maybe emotionally unaware in a particular situation?
It's usually whenever my wife is with me and she what's it called? Decompresses or whatever we debrief when we debrief from the situation.
Okay.
He was like, "Do you realize what was going on there?" And I'm like, I had no idea. I mean, this is not a leadership thing. This was something that happened recently where we were visiting somewhere and regularly, and this guy kept saying like, he kept talking to me. He's like, "Oh, what did you think about this? What did you think about that?" And like every week it was a new thing. And finally my wife was like, "I've never seen someone want to be so much your friend. Like never seen it like so obvious that they want to be your friend and you're blowing them off." And I'm like, "Wait, what? I would not blow off someone who wants to be my friend because I want to be friends with everyone."
Yeah.
And I realized I missed all the signals. I missed all the things that should have been aware. I should have been self-aware or aware of the situation, emotionally intelligent, to realize, oh, this person was putting themselves out there and I was swatting them down. Maybe because I was so much in my own head, maybe because like I don't know why, but that was a moment that happened. And it's interesting. I feel like, that one of the benefits of counseling is that they help you see yourself from the outside. I found that whenever someone comes to me with a problem, when my wife comes to me with a problem or a friend, it's really easy for me to see the situation clearly and say, "Oh, you just need to do this. Isn't that obvious?" I can't do that for myself as much. That's the reality of like, it is really hard to see yourself from an outside perspective.
That's right.
That's part of the benefit of working in a team. That's part of the benefit of going to counseling. But I think maybe what this comes down to, this lack of self-awareness, would be that we don't receive from other people that mirror that they can provide for us because we become defensive or because we become so busy that we don't listen to people or that we don't even like take time to evaluate what they're saying.
Yeah.
I think that's maybe what kind of creates that lack of self-awareness. So here's my question. How do you become, because this is a question anytime I read a book, I kind of do like devil's advocate when I read it. I'm like, well, okay,
Yeah.
that's a great idea, but how do you do this?
Yeah.
How do you become self-aware? Like,
Yeah.
really, like so yes, you get emotionally healthy, but even when I'm in an emotionally healthy state, I don't know that I'm necessarily the best at being self-aware. Again, I'm aware for other people, but not necessarily for myself. I don't know. That's something I struggle with. Maybe we can talk that out.
Yeah. Yeah. That could be a episode or heck, a series in and of itself. So I like to tell people I do a lot of work in emotional intelligence. And so there's one aspect of emotional intelligence being self-awareness. You cannot become self-aware by yourself.
Huh. That's interesting.
Yeah. So what's
And
interesting.
I agree with it. I agree with that because it is like, I cannot, as hard as I try, I have a hard time. Even when it comes to like marketing, I talk to people all the time. I'm like, you just need to market yourself. They're like, I can't market myself.
Yeah.
I'm a marketer. That's my business, but I can't market myself. Like there's a reality of like something about us being too close to the problem keeps us blind.
Yeah. So here's what's interesting about self-awareness. So I do, like I said, a lot of work in the space. Statistically, 95. This is hilarious. 95%.
I love that you always have statistics. You don't have ChatGPT open. You literally just have these in your brain. By the way.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, yeah. Maybe this. I'm giving you a sneak peek of what's in here. So it's probably
just
like,
numbers going around.
What does this guy do? Right. I don't know. I don't do. Anyways. What's interesting is 95% of people statistically think they're self-aware. 95%. The reality, 10 to 15% of people actually are self-aware. That's a massive. You have an 80 to an 85% delta between who think they are and who actually are. Here's this may be interesting because you say, all right, well, how does self-awareness doesn't really make a big difference. What we see is organizations, churches, companies, doesn't matter, that have a higher number of self-aware people actually have a stronger performance as a team. When you're high in self-awareness, it is actually the number one thing linked to as a predictor of success, which is like not hard work, not a lot of things we think, but self-aware. And the last little interesting thing is when you have an accurate self-assessment, so self-aware, you personally actually have a higher performance if people were rating you. Okay, so
I can see that because it's like you get really frustrated with like, why can't my boss see what I see?
Yeah.
But if they were self-aware, you'd be like, okay, then I rate you better because like you get it. Even if you're not perfect, you at least see what I'm frustrated about, right?
Yeah, yeah. And when you talk about strategies, I mean, I know we got to move to some other things, but if you talk about strategies of being self-aware, again, you can't become self-aware by yourself. So that means you referenced this earlier, your wife, our wives are so good at that. Kids help us do that. Yeah.
If you're willing to accept the punishment, like they don't think you're cool.
That is so right. Yeah. My kids do this, they, bust my chops and I'm like, you can't hide much from them.
I got a 5-year-old who still thinks I'm cool. So I'll eventually get where you are, but
yeah, I got 21 and 17 and like coolness
no cool left.
a bit ago. But on the self-awareness, I think it is beginning to, this is the challenge of being fully present because the more you can do that, you can pay attention to how you're feeling. So one thing that you could do is, and maybe we could put together some strategies and drop it on the website at some point, but it's beginning to pay attention to how you feel and how you're responding in particular moments. You could even jot these down. Jonathan asked me a question. I felt embarrassed. I felt challenged. I felt, excited, whatever.
Yeah.
What did I do? So you begin to look for patterns of how you do this. The other thing, and I've done this for years, I have people I trust in meetings, watch my behavior, watch my words, watch all that stuff. And then I tell them after the meeting, I want to know, give me feedback.
Yeah. It's kind of what you would do when you're like public speaking, right? You record yourself and you watch it back. You could essentially do that in a meeting, but you could have someone do that for you. Just kind of chart your energy levels, your demeanor, your emotions, like, cause they can see it. Like none of us are that like unreadable, right? We all, if it's someone who knows you well, they should be able to read your emotions.
Yeah. Here's what's interesting. And this may be too provocative to say, but unawareness isn't neutral. In other words, it's like, it's not just there. eventually unawareness will become destructive. It's never just neutral or never just a throwaway. And the sad reality is this, that if you don't see yourself from the inside out, if you don't have people to help you kind of get in there, and I know it's scary. Some of us are afraid of what we might discover. Some of us know things are tucked away inside and we're afraid to unlock those things. Some of us, we've heard about stories and we're like, I don't want to be that way. But here's the reality. If you don't see yourself from the inside out, eventually other people will see you from the outside in. So in other words, whatever's deep inside eventually gets put on display. And so
that's a reality of like kind of honeymoon period, right? There's this honeymoon period when you get to a new leader or to a new church or wherever you are, where you see the outside's pretty nice, but then the longer you're there, the cracks start to show and you start seeing that inside part. And if that inside part is not dealt with, often really it's our inside part that we're seeing through the other person, right? That's starting to show. And we're like,
yes,
oh, like, the serial, what is it? The serial, job hunter that's like, okay, this job every 2 years you get a new job because that old workplace was like so toxic, right? Like, and at some point you start realizing, oh, maybe the cracks are in me instead of in the place that I'm working, right? There's this self-awareness that comes available. But yeah, there's this honeymoon period where we're all tightened up and those cracks are all flush with each other and we don't really see it, and then it just starts opening up as we get more comfortable.
Yeah, and pay attention. Another strategy, and you said something that made me think about this. Pay attention to, like, how do you feel in certain moments? So again, these are just look, what we're really inviting you to do is to strengthen your noticer muscle, that you would notice how I'm thinking, what I'm thinking, how did I emotionally respond? Because remember this, emotions are these intense, automatic, physical reactions to a stimuli. Okay, something happens, it's this automatic physical reaction. A feeling is different. A feeling is this conscious interpretation of something that is happening that I am mentally labeling that is connected to a physical sensation. And they're happening like so fast, and we don't even realize it. In fact, on average, people have about 27 emotions every hour. And so, we got to begin to pay attention to these things. So we're looking for patterns. What are the things that, we need to work on? So I know self-awareness is a big thing. Let me ask you this, because I know there's some other characteristic traits. See, I knew we could hang out on that one forever today.
We even have some myths we need to get through. So yeah, we gotta move on.
Yeah, let me ask you this. He talks about character traits. The second being prioritizing ministry over marriage or singleness. It's not uncommon, right? This is no secret that leaders often put ministry first above everything, above everybody, right?
Yeah.
Even key relationships. Why?
It's something that, I mean, it's the beautiful thing about ministry is that you're doing something that matters, right?
Yeah.
And it's even a little bit measurable. The tough thing about being a parent is, my 2-year-old bit his brother this morning. He bit his brother last week. He bit his brother 2 weeks ago. And I'm working on it. I'm working on it every single week, right? Like we're reading the books, we're doing the courses, we're doing all the things, right? And it's far less measurable, partially because I know it better, right? Like if you're working in a church, you see the people come in, you see, and this can get to, one of the other myths of the of unhealth or whatever. But the idea is we see, because we see more shallow what's going on in people's lives, unless you're like a counseling pastor where you're seeing people's mess. But if you're a rough designer, if you're a worship leader, you're not getting into the trenches so much with people, and you see largely more shallow results. So you see, someone came in and we had 200 people here this week, 300 people here this week. Whereas my son, it feels like the same issue every single week. I know people that work in counseling, especially in churches, it can feel very frustrating because you're like, nothing changes week to week, right? Whenever it comes to more organizational ministry, stuff just changed week to week. That guitar player got better. We saw a result. It was good. Like, are they actually having a good walk with Jesus? Who cares? They're good at guitar, right? Like, we see the results, and so it feels better, and we can see more moving of the needle. But yeah, which gets to kind of one of these myths of bigger is not better.
Mm.
I kind of summarized it my own way. He said, we get one of the myths of unhealth is that bigger is better.
Yeah.
We get focused on numbers. We get focused on just seeing, again, 200 people this week. I was guilty of this when I worked at a church, especially as a worship leader. Whenever I would get up on stage and it was a low Sunday, it was a holiday weekend, it felt miserable. Partially because the team, like the group dynamic was there. Whenever you're leading worship in an empty room, the energy level is not there. And I was so responsive to the energy level that people were giving back to me. I know some pastors are the same way. We're like, hey, you gotta preach back to me, right? Like they want the amens, they want the
Yeah.
But I was so built on that it was kind of like a devastating feeling whenever we had a low Sunday. Then we had a good Sunday, and it was amazing. I felt great afterwards, right? Like the numbers are fickle, and my emotions were fickle with those numbers. And that was something that, but again, that goes to like, it's easy to prioritize the numbers because we see real data versus marriage, singleness. Am I becoming a better person for the potential spouse? Am I helping my children become more loving? It's hard to see that because it's a much slower process.
Yeah. Yes. You're right. And sometimes this is not the right phrase, but you'll get what I'm saying. Like sometimes one is sexier than the other.
Yeah.
And that if I see growth and development and addition and multiplication and whereas marriage or singleness, friendships, relationships are just day to day. It's like there's nothing necessarily splashy. And I think, and Craig Rochelle, who's senior pastor, founding pastor at Life Church in Oklahoma, he talks about this so much, that consistency, being consistent. And really that's what, in our marriages and in our relationships as, single people, that's what is needed. In fact, I would say this phrase: if marriage or if ministry wins and relationships lose, relationships could be if you're single and you have tight-knit relationships, marriage, kids, spouse, and those relationships, any of those, then really everyone loses, because what's happening is I'm sacrificing important relationships in the name of devotion. But really what's happening
quote
is
unquote devotion.
Right.
We call it devotion, but it's not necessarily devotion to Jesus. It's devotion to the organization.
That's right. But really what's happening is I'm displacing people, and I'm displacing myself, and I'm displacing the church, and I'm really getting things out of the working order that God intended for things to be optimally inside of. And so
that creates the culture.
Yeah.
Where now it's an expectation on someone else as well. I know I regularly talk to people. They're like, I was single. I was always at the church. Now I'm married and I can't do what I used to be able to do.
Yeah.
But the expectation is still there of me. And it's a really hard thing to navigate. Now I have a spouse. Now I potentially have kids.
Yeah.
And my availability is less than, because it's easy when you're single, like, yeah, I'll stay at the church till 10. All of my friends are there. Like, I have no responsibilities. I'll grab Taco Bell and then come back to the church, right? It's easy when you're single. When you have a spouse, when you have kids, when you have other responsibilities, it becomes not that easy. And it's hard for pastors. A lot of people are in that environment where, like, my spouse is always at the church too. We're always at the church all the time. And sometimes family situations change, and that's not possible.
Man, and let me say this. If you're on a church staff and you're listening right now, most churches do not understand the reality that you're human. If you're listening right now, we're talking to you. You're human. You have friendships that are important to you. You have potentially a marriage. You have a kid or multiple kids. You have parents. You're human. And sometimes I think what the church does is they create a system that doesn't serve you, the human, the Jesus follower, very well. And so we get into this game where we have to give up what God never intended us to sacrifice, but he intended for us to protect. But you're in an organizational structure that feels suffocating. Some of that you could potentially have created,
Yeah.
right? With lack of boundaries, or maybe your leader leads like that, or your elders or your deacons set up like that, where you could be talking about cultural elements. In fact, I would say this parenthetically, what I learned in my research on burnout is one of the key contributors to burnout is not necessarily the decisions of the leader, but it's the church structure that actually can accelerate and facilitate burnout because of the burden they place on leaders. And so for you, it
I
could
would
be this
say
organization.
a key thing, though, is it's not that churches don't want healthy people. They want healthy people as long as they're not on staff. It's like, right? Like, because I think everyone's like, yes, prioritize your spouse. Yes,
Yeah.
prioritize like your family, like do all of that. Prioritize spending time in the word. We preach that. But
Yeah.
there's sometimes in certain churches, and I wouldn't say this is all churches. I would say in certain churches that are focused on growth often, it can be, but not you. You're a minister. It's your job to pour out every last bit of yourself and figure out how to refill on your own time, right? Like, but you got to pour out. And I think that is a reality.
So, which leads us to the third characteristic he talks about of
Thanks
being
for keeping
an
on track, Jason.
No, you're good. It's a great lead in. So thanks for teeing me up. This idea that we're doing more activity for God than our relationship with God can support.
I really experienced that. I found myself in a content generating game, with Sunday Social, I create a lot of content. I found myself reading scripture and stopping so I could jot something down to, I found myself reading scripture. This would be a great post for Sunday Social.
Oh, yeah.
Or this would be a great, a great email that I could write, right? Like, I started reading for content instead of reading for my soul.
Yeah, man, that's so good.
It's not good.
Yeah. No,
it's a reality. I think anyone working in a church can relate to that. Like, you've done that, right?
100%. This would be, I need to share this with Jonathan. This would be great for Jonathan. And I could, put this on social media. I could include this.
I had to flip that switch off. I had to resist the urge. I would say for 20 minutes, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to jot it down. And then I would be done. And then I would say, okay, now I'm going to try to see if I can find that again. And it was inconvenient. Like, I could have just, jotted it down, but it was inconvenient to go back. But it was something that I needed to do for my soul.
Yeah. And we're so, especially, working in church, we're so motion generated and focused. And really the meaning in the moment is, Jesus, where are you right now? And what is it that if I'm reading something, if I'm listening to something, if I'm seeing something artistic, beautiful, a sunset, it's, what do you want me to know right now?
Yeah, that's good.
Not what do you want me to share right now? What do you want me to know right now? And I think when we do that, what's happening is we're not doing these things to replenish ourselves for the purpose of simply giving more out or replenishing ourselves as we keep that relationship, with God tight and in step and healthy and consistent. And as a result, we get the chance. So we're not replenishing just to give back out. Oh, I'm going to drain my cup again, fill back up. We kind of go through this cycle. It wasn't intended to be like that. It's really, I need to focus on my relationship with God to let that well fill up, because that's how he wants me to live. Yeah. And then he gives me opportunities to do things, on his behalf. But I can't do those things just to give out. I would say this, and I don't know if this is fair. I have done this before. Sometimes I think doing too much for him could be a sign that I'm running from something and not running toward God. I'm trying to do more because it makes me feel better. I'm trying to please people. I'm trying to, demonstrate responsibility. I'm trying to insert, versus running to God first, asking him, what is it that you want me to see? What is it that you want me to know? Is there anything you want me to do right now? And really that being with him, which leads us into this last character trait that I want to ask you about. That, man, this one's really hard because we're momentum people. Yeah. But the fourth trait, and I know you've got some myths there as well, is failing to practice Sabbath.
Sabbath, meaning intentional rest, not having a day off work, but intentional rest, meaning putting away the phone or
Yes.
turning off the news or doing the
Yes.
things that cause us to, even if we're thinking about work or simulating work or feeling stressed. Yeah, I think that's one of those. When we were writing "Don't Burn Out, Burn Bright," it really changed my perspective on Sabbath. The idea that it's not just not working.
That's right.
It's a really separating myself for a time where I can focus on family, God, what God has given me, all these things. I want to talk about something real quick because we have these 4 myths. Bigger is not better. Who you are. What's more important is who you are, not what you do. We can't settle for surface spirituality. We have to just because it looks good doesn't mean we have to settle. We have to really focus on what's deep. But then addressing issues is one of the fourth ones where sometimes we tend to let's not address it. Let's just settle for peace and let's not address the elephant in the room. I push back on this because, and again, I wish we could have unpacked this idea, what he says about this better. But the idea is, I think there are a lot of people who they address every issue.
Yes.
Where they're just constantly battling. That's not right. This shouldn't be this way. That shouldn't be this way. And then there's other people who are like, oh, it's fine. I'm a white person, so I tend to focus on it's fine. We won't address that. We don't want to hurt people's feelings. It's really unhealthy for the team, but I don't want to stir the pot. Right. There's this tendency to do that. How do you balance that? I want to ask you, how do you balance that? Actually addressing the issue that's causing toxic, deterioration of the organization, and how do you balance that with then just being the person who's always battling every battle?
Yeah. It's hard to answer that in a succinct way. I will say this
in the 1 minute that we have left.
Yeah. I don't think that you have to address everything. And at the same time, I don't think you should address nothing.
Yeah.
I think can you measure impact? What's what's happening on the wear and tear of your people? Is it preoccupying the majority of people? Maybe the issue that you think needs to be addressed is not really the issue at hand, right? So it's being discerning.
Which again, emotional intelligence, awareness.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I will say this, sometimes people want to go after every issue as a sign or as a demonstration that you care. But what happens is, if you're not careful, is you actually create excessive chaos and not calm.
Yeah.
And one thing I can say is great leaders do bring, and they know how to bring, a sense of calm in the midst of chaos.
It kind of makes me think about the concept of the Bible as a continuing revelation where God didn't, he gave 10 commandments, right? But he didn't address polygamy in the beginning, right? He didn't address slavery at a certain point. And people see that and criticize scripture as that. But could it be that God was saying humanity cannot handle all the change toward righteousness right now, which is maybe heretical what I'm saying right now. But the idea that God was aware of our ability to process him addressing things that needed to be fixed and was slow to it. Out of his love, right? Out of his love for us. He didn't address everything at that moment that needed change. He said, this is what they can handle right now. Let's change that.
Yeah.
I don't know. What do you think about that?
Well, and here's the thing, here's what the church is great at doing. We're great at talking about things that have a result in behavioral modification. And if people behaviorally modify whatever it is, then we label that as success. It doesn't mean the heart changed.
Yeah.
But if we could just get people to behave in a certain way, or we attack the behavior, then it fixes things. And I think the church...
They can lust, but as long as they don't act on the lust, we're good, right?
Yeah. I'm telling you, I think that the church, and this is a whole nother episode.
Yeah.
I would say as a warning is we've become obsessed with behavioral modification.
I agree.
And it hasn't focused on internal heart life transformation. And I think that's what Jesus was after. And so when we think about being a healthy or unhealthy leader, when Pete talks about these 4 characteristics, really the pause that we have to do is look in the mirror and go, which of these 4 characteristics or which of these myths do I believe in? And what might God be pointing me, not my church, not my staff, but
not
pointing me to right now? Yeah, not my boss, but me right now. And starting with me, and see what happens inside let God do his thing, not for the purpose of everybody else that you serve,
Yeah.
but for the purpose of helping you become more like him.
It reminds me of that quote, send revival, start with me, right?
Yes.
That's what we should be reading this for. So, hey,
That's right.
I love this conversation. We're going to be doing chapter 2 next week. We got to wrap up. We've run a little bit long, but encourage you to read along with us. You don't have to. You could do it on audiobook. You don't have to read. We're hopefully summarizing as well as we can, but I really like this book. So I'm excited to talk about it more next week. So we'll see you next week.